fishmen, a hell of a lot of eggs, and a silent but deadly protagonist. The Shape of Water is on today's menu. Hey folks, I'm Andrew Fantasia, and welcome to Thumb Together, where we're going to talk about a certain movie together. And today's movie is The Shape of Water. This is the new Guillermo del Toro movie. And I gotta admit, I'm a little late to the party talking about this one, and that's for two reasons. One, because Star Wars just came out, so my last 10 days has just been an influx of warring stars and videos about that, and on the other channel, like, it's just been Star Wars overload. So that's kind of delayed this one. And the second reason was I had a hell of a hard time finding a cinema near my house that was playing The Shape of Water, because I guess it was very limited release for the first week and a half that this movie was out. It was only playing at one theater, and that was all the way downtown Toronto, and I'm not driving all the way downtown Toronto, so I had to wait, and finally it came to one that was like 35 minutes away from me, which was about as close as it got. So I'm like, I better freaking go see this before it vanishes. So I finally got to see The Shape of Water. What do I think? Well, I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. It was a lot of what I've come to love from a Guillermo del Toro movie. If you're not a fan of his, you will not like this. I'm going to put that out there right now. If you're not a Guillermo del Toro person, if you've watched his movies and you're like, nah, this isn't for me, don't go see The Shape of Water. Because The Shape of Water is like 100% Guillermo del Toro. But if you like his stuff, then you're going to have a good time. You are. This, let's go into the plot really quickly. The movie is a period piece, which I actually did not know. It takes place, they never really specify, but I'm going to guess the very late 40s, maybe early 50s, because there's some tension between the Americans and the Soviets. So I'm going to say early mid-50s, actually. And the main character is this woman by the name of Eliza. And Eliza works as a janitor, as a cleaning lady in this place, which is essentially Area 51. But it's not Area 51. It's not out in the desert. She lives in Baltimore. But it's basically that kind of building. This is a government building where weird shit happens. And she's just, a person who mops the floors and cleans the bathrooms. And the cool thing about Eliza that I didn't know going into this is she's mute. She's not deaf. She can hear everybody, but she's mute. So the whole time, the actress, I think her name is Sally Jenkins or Sally Hawkins. I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. Sally something. But the actress who is doing the whole thing in sign language, which was really cool. I wasn't expecting that. And we got some really great moments in the movie where she's like mega emotional, and she's got to bring that to light through the sign language, and it's freaking cool. So it's about her, and she's mopping up this place where all this wacky stuff happens, and all the government secrets are being told, and she's just she's literally this silent person in the background mopping while an alien will be brought in and dissected. Like, it's that kind of building. And one day they bring in this creature. He's essentially the creature from the Black Lagoon. He's like an amphibious man in a tank. And the movie is essentially about Eliza's blossoming friendship with this creature. It's in captivity. I mean, the American government in this movie, they're not nice people. They are some sadistic fucking people. And they just, they do what you would expect villains in a movie like this to do, is they torture this creature. They want to tear it open and study it, and they treat it like an animal or whatever, and it's very intelligent, but they beat it and they shock it. And Eliza is the one who kind of sits down and starts to talk to this thing, and she brings her little bag lunch, and she sits by the tank where this thing is being kept, and she's just like, look, egg. No, that's not how you say egg. I think egg is I wish I could remember the sign language, but egg, the word for egg kind of looks like you're cracking an egg, so at least it's kind of easy to remember. She shows the creature how to eat. She teaches it about music, and it's this great little story about communication, because the creature can't speak English and she can't speak, period. So their communication is such a unique little thing. Like, that relationship is gorgeous. But stuff happens in the plot that really moves it along, and it goes a typical way you would expect in a story like this. But there's a certain aspect of it that I liked, that I'll save for spoilers. We got Michael Shannon. Michael Shannon plays the villain in this movie. Surprise, Michael Shannon, the villain, right? But he's great, as always. He plays a guy by the name of Mr. Strickland, I think. Not that Strickland. Yeah, this Strickland. That's the one. And he's a G-man, you know. He's a government man, and he's mean, and he's cruel, and he's sadistic. And he carries around this friggin' big shock stick with him everywhere he goes. And he just treats this monster like garbage. He's a bad dude. This guy's a bad dude. And, of course, you know, he's got all the power in this facility. He's essentially in charge of it. But even he is answering to a higher power. He's got a general by the name of General Hoyt, who's the top of military brass, who's riding him to get results, too. So even though this guy is bad to the bone, even he is under pressure from somebody even worse than him. But Michael Shannon's character, Strickland, is very much... He's a classic antagonist. He is what you would expect. The minute you tell me this is a movie about a creature in captivity and only one person bonds with it, obviously I'm going to put two and two together because I have seen motion pictures before in my life and know that, okay, there's going to be a bad guy in this movie who's just the one keeping the thing in captivity and treating it like trash. It's like the theme park owner from Free Willy, just like, I hate that whale and I want to cash in on it. It's like that kind of villain. A very, very basic kind of villain. You know, nothing out of the ordinary, nothing sort of that you would not expect. But Michael Shannon plays him so well, so intensely. God, he's a scary dude. He's got this great little sort of character trait where he's always got a box of lime candies in his pocket. And every time you see him, you know, he's always pulling one out and stuffing it in his mouth and talking through it, and he's like, I like these candies, but you know what? I don't like that damn monster, and I'm going to beat it. I'm paraphrasing. That's not an actual line from a professional script, folks. It's not. The thing that I have come to love about Guillermo del Toro is that, to me, he is the modern master of fairy tales. He is. He tells modern, original fairy tales the way that they were told, not by Disney, but like back in the day. Like, I'm talking back in the Grimm day, when fairy tales were a lot darker and spookier, but they still had this sort of light deep within them, this message of hope that kind of shone through all that darkness. His stuff is very much like a Grimm fairy tale. I've never read like the original Hans Christian Andersen version of The Little Mermaid or the original version of Beauty and the Beast, but I've heard that they are significantly not Disney. You know, there's no saying teacups in those. That's some dark shit. But there's some beauty that kind of wells up from that, and that's where I think Guillermo del Toro lives in that universe. He lives in the Grimm fairy tale universe, which is to say it's moody and it's monstrous, and it's the kind of thing that would scare the hell out of you if you were a kid and you heard it. But at the end of the day, you're charmed. And even though I wouldn't call this the strongest Del Toro movie, it hit all those beats for me. It frightened me. It drew me in with its darkness and its eeriness, but I was charmed the whole way through. Particularly by Eliza. And again, I'm sorry I can't remember the actress's name. Sally Hawkins, I think. But I was 100% charmed by this woman. She was such a great hero. Everything from just the very deliberate plainness of her costumes, the way she dressed very plain. She looked, something about her, just her figure, her silhouette, she looked like a hero. She looked like a classic fairy tale hero, especially with the broom in her hand. Broom Kid, Last Jedi. But no, she just looked like a classic hero from a fairy tale. And coupling that with just the great performance she gave as this mute character, who you're constantly rooting for this woman. You just want her to win. And she's such a nice lady, and all these horrible people and horrible things, keep antagonizing her. but she really stands out to me as like, she's definitely my favorite character in this movie, rightfully so. She's the main character, but she just rocks it, and she really lent it that sense of fairy tale heroism. She was, Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk. She was both Hansel and Gretel. She was Thumbelina. Like, she just had that look, that presence to her, which I think was fantastic. I gotta mention her friend. I don't remember the actor's name who played him either. I'm not hitting a lot of home runs with these actors' names today, but her friend, he lives in the apartment next to her, and he is a struggling artist, literally. Like, he draws stuff, and he's trying to sell it. He's drawing magazine ads, and he's not successful at it, and he's sort of this old lost soul, and he's best friends with Eliza because they're neighbors and they take care of each other. And he was such a great character too, and he really popped as this sympathetic dude, and you felt for him, and his relationship with Eliza was so cool because it was just a person who sort of was at the end of his life, and he really had nothing to show for it. And then this woman who's still young, fairly young at the beginning of her life, but it looks like she's going to end up going down the same path. Like, she's a lonely person. And the two of them, we don't ever see them meet. They already have met by the time the movie starts. But the two of them sort of have found each other and are looking out for each other. They got each other's backs. And there's something really cool and primal about that. Like, I love friendships like that where it's like, we take care of each other. A lot of lesser movies would just have, you would say characters are friends, but you wouldn't really show it. This showed it. This really showed the true, how it showed how truly deep that friendship runs, and it's great. So he was awesome. So Eliza has formed a relationship with this sea monster, this sea creature, who, by the way, is played by Doug Jones in his, I want to say, 900th time playing an amphibious man. Before I get to spoilers, I'll just give you one quick little snippet of where the plot is going, and then if you want to be spoiled, by all means, carry on and watch the rest of this. But obviously, the people holding the amphibious man captive are not nice people, and they're not going to do nice things to him. So Eliza grows to really care for this fish man, and eventually she decides, he can't be a captive anymore. Something's got to be done about this. Damn it. Except she doesn't say that because, she signs it. But that's where this movie's going. And I'll stop there. I'll put up the spoiler thing now. And if you want to carry on, do so. If you want to watch the movie first, by all means, go ahead. Good luck finding it. Because I sure as hell didn't have good luck finding it. Eliza decides, I can't let the government kill this beautiful thing. So she reaches out to her friend, her neighbor, and she's like desperate. She's like, help me come up with a plan. I don't know sign language. I'm really bad at it. She's like, help me come up with a plan to save this thing. And so they at first he doesn't want any part of it because he's got his own shit going on, but then he realizes how futile that is and how the people that he wants to sell his art to are just garbage people anyway. So he's like, fuck it, I'm helping my friend. So he goes and he helps his friend, and he helps Eliza with this sort of really ingenious scheme, really, to break the Fishman out of the government building. So we see that plane come into action. It's a very, very uncomplex sort of like Ocean's 11 kind of thing that they do to break the guy out. But what I really dug about this movie, what I wasn't expecting, was when you reach that part of this kind of story where we break the Fishman out of captivity, usually that's the end of the movie. But this wasn't the end of the movie. This was like the middle of the movie. And there's a whole other half afterwards, which I thought, okay, that's cool. I was not expecting this to keep going. And I think it really shines in the latter half of this movie. The first half is where, you've got your very basic setup, but the payoff is this second half because she takes this thing home, and first of all, it can't survive outside of salt water for very long, so she's got to fill a bathtub, keep the saline levels consistent. She's buying tubs of salt this big and just like pouring it in there, and finally he's like, I can breathe. He can't talk, but he's like, I can breathe now, thank you. And then what follows is just many weeks of her and her neighbor taking care of this creature in their bathroom, And in the meantime, Michael Shannon's character, Strickland, is just frothing at the mouth trying to find this thing. He's got General Hoyt breathing down his neck saying, find this thing or I will ruin your career and you will be nothing. And Michael Shannon just bought like a fancy new Cadillac. He's got a family he's trying to support. So you can kind of, even though he's like this really basic, stereotypical villain, you kind of sympathize with him, even though he's a, irascible douchebag and he's really belligerent and you don't want him to win. You feel like you're like, okay, I understand why this guy is so intense because he might lose everything he's got. So he is just on this mad crusade to find out what happened to the creature. And every time he's investigating the disappearance, it's really intense because you're like, oh damn, he's onto her. He knows Eliza did it. And Eliza's friend Zelda, who's another cleaning lady, was helping her out too. And so Zelda kind of has to keep up this lie. There's also a scientist who works at the facility who is actually a double agent working for the Russians. But he's not a bad guy. He's actually a nice dude, and he wanted the creature to be free too, so he helped. So he's also lying to Michael Shannon. So it's all these people trying to keep all their lies in the air and keep Michael Shannon from figuring out that they're the ones responsible. And that set up a lot of great suspense. Like there was some moments in there where it was like almost Inglourious Bastards levels of suspense where I was like, shit, he's like Hans Landa right now. Like I'm legitimately frightened for Eliza. I hope he doesn't catch her. And all the while, Eliza and the Fishman start to fall in love. And that was another thing I didn't expect. I expected this, Free Willy, a boy and his whale kind of friendship, just a girl and her Fishman. And I would have been content with that. But then they turned it into a love story. And at first I was like, ooh, is that, am I weirded out by this? I mean, there's literally a scene where she has sex with a Fishman. That's the thing. But then I was like, no, you know what? This is friggin' beautiful. It's these two sort of just lost souls, these outcasts. Eliza was a very lonely person. Boyfriends were not a thing that she was familiar with. So she found this thing. She fell in love with it, regardless of how it looked. She just loved it because it was a beautiful thing and it was kind. And it loved her back because she was a beautiful thing and she was kind. And so that relationship, I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting the love story to come out of that. And I thought that was very sweet. And it made it all the more heart-wrenching because we established very early on, as soon as she frees it, we established quickly that she has to let it go. She has to send it out to sea. And she's just waiting for a day because there's a day where heavy rains come to the town. And when that day comes, they lift this gate that lets this channel flow out into the sea. And so she's waiting for that. She's like, okay, once the rains come, I can put him in the channel and he'll be swept out to sea and he'll be able to survive. So she's keeping him until then. But of course she falls in love with him. She can't, they can't help it. That love just happens, baby. And then that day is coming closer and closer. And then she's like, do I want to get rid of him now? And her neighbor is like, girl, you have to get rid of him. Like, he's going to die otherwise. And it breaks your heart because she's like, oh, God, now I don't want to anymore. And meanwhile, Michael Shannon's like, where's that freaking monster? So all these things are just coming to a head. And it's really intense. By the end of it all, she's got to give it up. And her and her neighbor take it to go put it out to pasture. Not put it out to pasture. It's not to kill it, but to send it to sea so it can be happy. But at this point, Michael Shannon has discovered where the monster is, and he's coming after them. And they have this confrontation. And that goes pretty much the way you expect. He almost kills the monster. He almost kills Eliza. But then, he gets overpowered. The monster's like, hey, screw you, asshole. And it cuts his neck open. And Eliza's been shot during this confrontation. And she's about to die. But as we establish a thing, which actually I shouldn't have overlooked it, but it's kind of important. While they're living with the monster in their home, we find out that the monster has very interesting powers. He touches her neighbor's head, and a few days later he wakes up with hair because he was going bald. He's an old man. And we realize that this monster can heal when he touches you. He's like a fish Jesus. Once Eliza is shot by Michael Shannon, the monster takes her under the water and he touches her with his like gill hand and whatever. And she's got these scars on her neck, which we never really find out where they're from. I think it's assumed that she was possibly a victim of sexual assault at one point, because she doesn't like being touched. She's very, she's very sensitive about that, and I think that's what the scars are supposed to indicate, that somebody hurt her really, like, real bad back in the day. And when the fish man heals her, those scars turn into gills, and she's able to breathe underwater, and she lives happily ever after underwater with this fish man. And underwater, it doesn't matter if you can't talk. So it's literally the place she was meant to be, which is it's a very fairy tale-ish thing to do. And that's how The Shape of Water ends, with that. I don't think this is as strong a movie as something like Pan's Labyrinth, which today might still be my favorite Guillermo del Toro fairy tale. It's not quite that level of, like, wonderfulness, but it did the job. It was through and through a beautiful dark fairy tale with some really crazy stuff that goes on, but we get that happily ever after. And I think that's what's so great about these movies, is they really are, that is the best way to sum up his films, is they are like Brothers Grimm fairy tales for a modern age. They're always very original stories, even if they have familiar themes, because that's what fairy tales are all about. I wouldn't call this my favorite Guillermo movie, but I would highly recommend watching it if you're a fan of his, because it hits all the right notes. It gives you the feels. You're on this ride. As predictable as the plot is, it also isn't sometimes, which is I know it's kind of an oxymoron, but they really did well with keeping me in suspense. There were times when I was like, maybe the creature might actually be more danger than good. They really sort of played with that. It wasn't like obvious from the get-go that this is a magical thing and it just wants to spread love. It wasn't like, there are a lot of times, even when Eliza takes it home, like that late in the game, when you're like, maybe this thing like needs like a leash or something, because those are sharp claws it's got. So you're constantly sort of on the edge of your seat, like you really don't know where things are going to go, regardless of how familiar it may all feel. I would recommend Shape of Water. Go see it. It's a lot of fun. It's a beautiful looking period piece. The colors are just gorgeous. They really did a great job of making, like I said, I can't stress it enough, like making a modern fairy tale, and giving us the dark and the light in a beautiful, satisfying way. So that is The Shape of Water. Great job, guys. I think if I have one PS to add to this, you know how Universal is doing the whole dark universe with the Universal monsters coming together, which I really, really was pulling for, and I loved that idea. But the Mummy, the Tom Cruise Mummy, kind of put those ideas to bed. It was not a very satisfying movie. And one of those Universal Dark Universe movies is supposed to be Creature from the Black Lagoon. I don't think you need to make that movie now, Universal. I mean, this is already the best Creature from the Black Lagoon movie I've ever seen. So I think you should just, slap a Universal logo on this, on Shape of Water, and just call it your Creature from the Black Lagoon. At this point, it's really probably to your benefit. That has been Thumb Together. I have been Andrew Fantasia. Not have been. I always will be Andrew Fantasia, until the courts get back to me about that thing. But please be sure to like and subscribe my videos, because if you do that, it helps me. That's how YouTube works. I can't make it any simpler than that. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time on Thumb Together.